Welcome into Rounding the Bases, the podcast about culture and leadership with a baseball twist, presented by Community America Credit Union. My name is Joel Goldberg, and we've got a really cool show today, and it is a repeat guest, but it's not often that I have, well, first off, I don't have a lot of repeat guests too frequently anyway. I think there are a million stories out there to be told, and I'm always looking for more of them. But when I do have a repeat guest, it's rare, I think, that guest would come on and have a totally different story to tell in terms of what's going on in their life. But that's the case today. Back in August of 2019, we ran a podcast with Kemet Coleman. And Kemet, well, just to label him as a musician would be very short-sighted, but he is a musician in Kansas City, frontman of the Fantastics. They're amazing. But he's also an entrepreneur, an urbanist. He is someone that always has his hands in a lot of different things. And now he has a new venture. But if you want to learn more about Kemet on the music side and much about him, August of 2019, I want to give everybody a taste because this was a fun one because we also turned it into a YouTube video and we had a chance to sit down not just with Kemet, but all of the Fantastics to talk about collaboration and culture and leadership and how you make something like their band work. So here's a little bit of clip of that from August. So that's just a little piece of it, and you can see the versatility of this band. I don't even think I featured too much of Kemet singing and rapping there, but he can do it all, and he is doing it all. And so I bring in right now my friend, entrepreneur, musician, and soon to be, well, we'll talk about what he has got going on here in just a moment, because it involves the world of beer and so much more. Kemet, what's going on?
Nothing much, man. How you doing?
I'm good. I saw you back in the virtual green room kind of bopping along to that one. And so you never stop, right? I mean, you're a musician at heart, but yeah. I also know as long as I've known you, and I think that's how many people know you, as they should. I mean, anybody that has been to one of your concerts, they feel it. There's an energy to it. But you're so much more than your music. And so now you are about to delve into, not about to, you've been, but you are delving into the world of beer in a big way and in a historic way here in Kansas City too. So first off, congratulations. Second of all, tell us what's going on.
Well, thank you very much, Joel. Again, it's an honor to be back on Rounding the Bases. I appreciate the opportunity every time. So Vine Street Brewing Company, we're coming first quarter to 2022. And, I just really, this has kind of been a dream come true for me. I've been working on this dream for the past 5 or 6 years and have failed 3 other times. So this is, I'm hoping the time that does not fail. We're already knee deep in this thing and there's no turning back.
Okay, so you are going to be in the beer and brewing business, and that in itself is a huge venture for anyone. Anytime you start something like this, it's a big deal. And I want to get into your background with that too. It's not like you just woke up one day and said, I'll start a brewery. I mean, you've got some experience there. Yeah. And I should have seen the signs because I saw you doing some guest brewing type of stuff, I think, in the last year or two. I didn't realize as much of your background, though, in that. I'd never talked to you about it before. Yeah. So, but before we go there, let's talk about the significance, because you guys will be the first here in Kansas City. Tell me the first at what?
We are the first Black-owned brewing company in not only Kansas City, but the state of Missouri. And that's a pretty significant deal because there's a couple of different reasons. One, the brewing industry is huge right now. There are thousands of breweries in the United States, and only a small percentage of those are Black owned. And I think it's definitely under 10%. It's probably more like 4 or 5 or 6. And so there's not a lot of representation. And so that's kind of one of the more exciting opportunities where hopefully, at the helm up here in Kansas City in the state of Missouri, and would like to inspire other, African Americans to get into the industry. But the other exciting part, for me at least, that comes full circle is beer was invented in ancient Egypt and Africa. And so it's a product of the African diaspora. My name happens to be the original name of ancient Egypt. And so this is something that's really full circle for me.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And, I think in many ways what you're doing is indicative of so much that is going on in this world right now. And what I mean by that is that you are highlighting and providing opportunity, opening doors. We're seeing so much more of that right now, but this isn't something that just happened. And oh, by the way, people of color, African Americans, they like beer like everybody else likes beer, or don't for that matter, right? I mean, we all have our different tastes, but it's not like suddenly Blacks are stumbling in the beer. What is happening now is that Blacks haven't had the opportunity to own a brewery. And they have. So I want to talk about that, because you don't just snap your finger and make this happen. There are so many elements on the business side that you have to make work, any business owner. And as I've so often talked about with guests on this show, the hill is steeper to climb for a person of color, the way the world and the way our country has been set up. So tell me about that and some of the hurdles that you're having to go through.
Yeah, that's you're pretty dead on about that. I mean, really, I think for a lot of us, the Black folks that I know that have gotten into the beer industry, they have recognized that there was a disconnect between them and the industry. And I think a lot of industries are kind of grappling with the same realities there. The coffee industry, for one, beer industry, And so for us, it was really a situation where we needed to make sure that there was that representation, but also, some of the hurdles that we had to cross, or that I had to cross in my first kind of, stumbling into the industry, into creating this venture, was definitely on, there was no other person like me that was doing this in Kansas City or in the state of Missouri. And that was also a glowing opportunity to really kind of be a trailblazer and a pioneer, which, as you know, I am not afraid of. In fact, I don't know if I could operate without being a trailblazer at this point. It's just, I'm like, all right, who's not in a place, who, everybody that looks like me, how come you're not there yet? And if you're not there, then I'm going to be there. I'm going to open the door for us. And so that's kind of one of the things that that's really passionate, that I'm passionate about.
I love that. I might ask you a little bit more about that later, because I know you well enough. You don't sit still, and you have a million things going on. So many of my guests do too. I think there's just a spirit to that, of the entrepreneurship where it's not just one thing, you keep on going. And so this is the next thing. So how did this all come about? I mean, you talked about trying a few times, but you had some background in the beer industry, right?
I did. Yeah. In 2013, I worked at Boulevard Brewing Company in their guest relations department. So everything from tours to the gift shop to pouring, in the tap room, during kind of the unfiltered tours and, all the different stuff that they had going on at the brewery in 2013, I was in the middle of. And so that was my first introduction into the beer industry, honestly. And really, I didn't know anything about beer before going into it. I knew that I was a performer, and so if I needed to learn some lines, that's not a problem. If I need to learn some history, that's not a problem. Learning some products, of course, that's not a problem. So when for me, when I got into the industry in 2013, I made a short list of, because I was kind of in a career phase. I was like, all right, what am I going to do here? The music thing wasn't enough, and so I needed to do something else. But I'm not really a type of person where I could sit at a 9-to-5 desk at a desk job. And so I made a short list of the companies that I really thought were cool to work at. And Boulevard was one of those companies. And so I sent out my resume, and they were like, yeah, come on for an interview. And so at that point, that's what opened this door. That's what got me into beer. And so after I started working there, I started to try all the new styles that I had no idea existed. I started to understand the culture that I had no idea existed, and I just got the bug.
And here you are now. So how did you and your partners collaborate or come to pull the trigger on this, and how challenging was it?
Well, I think after falling down 3 times, like, it was definitely a less of a challenge as the first 3 times. I would say the first time it was just, I was a little naive as far as the scale of this particular business, and so that kind of took some wind out of my sails. And then the second time, it was just maybe not the right partners. Third time, it was just not not the right location. So this time I have the right partners and the right location, and the right funding, the right at least access to capital. And so now, there's nothing stopping us but our own hustle.
All right, let's talk about partners and location. The partners you could reveal, the specific location you can't, but you could at least give us a feel for neighborhood, which is already in the name of the brewery when you're talking about Vine Street, which means that we're talking somewhere in that historic 18th and Vine district, which is so perfect because it's known for its music and of course the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. I mean, this was the hub. I've learned all the history of this from Bob Kendrick of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. I can pretty much recite it at this point and picture just thousands, if not tens of thousands of people on a Sunday marching down the street from church to the stadium to watch the Monarchs play. This was a hopping area, and it's coming back too. So let's talk about your partners and the location.
Yeah. So my partners, and I can't wait to talk about location, but partners, Woodie Bonds and Elliott Ivory. I met Woodie a few years ago at a festival he used to put on called Hip Hop Soiree. And Woodie is a home brewer, or now a commercial brewer, but was a home brewer, and used to put on this festival that I just loved. I thought it was the coolest festival in town. It was a hip hop beer festival. And so he had several DJs lined up along this area, had several breweries that were represented, and you got a glass. You walked around to these tents that the breweries had. You got beer. You listened to hip hop music. It was a great time. I think he even had some lowriders there, which was cool. So, I was like, who is this guy? Like, I need to know this guy, right? And so, because at the time I was like, well, I guess like there's really nobody else like me around here. And so I met Woodie. I was like, all right, well, we got to know each other. And so Woodie was the first person I've asked for this particular venture to do this. And then when I asked Woodie, he said, well, it took some time to think about it, but he came back to me and said, well, yeah, I think I want to do this, but if I'm going to do this, it has to be with Elliott. And so I'm like, well, I don't know Elliott, but I trust you. And it'd be nice to have, more than 2 of us doing this. So he brought Elliott in, and I met Elliott. We immediately hit it off. Elliott is the complete opposite of Woodie. He is like, Woodie is a very creative. I mean, he's creative in his, in his beer. Like, Woodie also works at Ford Motor Company, so he's also very consistent, but he's creative when it comes to beer. And so his styles are way out of the box, and he's not afraid to do really crazy stuff with his beer. But Elliott is more, I say a straight line, and I'm not sure if that's offending him or not, but I would say he's a straight line. he's 10-2 when it comes to pretty much all aspects. Cool, calm, and collected. Woody is definitely verbose and a little wild with it, and so we all get along in this really funky dynamic. But the location, we chose a location because we originally were gonna. We had someone reach out that wanted us to do it further in the Kansas City's east side, and as we started to look at the location, we were like, well, that's maybe a little. The neighborhood is probably not ready for a facility that creates an intoxicating beverage. Not yet, at least. Even though breweries are very great for communities, and I would love to see it there one day, we just didn't think it was ready. And so the next logical place, this has actually been the location that we're choosing now, was a previous location that I wanted, and so I came back to that location and the developers that were doing it and said, hey, it didn't work out back then. Would you still be interested in doing it now? And, it was a resounding hell yes. So yeah, we're down in the Jazz District, and, that's all I can say at the moment, but we're very in the heart. We're in there. It's, definitely a walking distance to the Jazz Museum, Blue Room, and all that.
That's perfect. I'm so excited to get over there, and I mean, I'll be there. All of our friends will be there. Kevin and I are in a group. We should highlight right now. Let's see, 16 or so minutes in, so that they can flag it here. The BTC, the Bowtie Club. So they like those shout outs to Nador and all the guys. But that we'll all be hanging out there, and it's going to become a huge thing. I'm so excited for it. I think it was interesting what you just said too, the way you described Woody and Elliott, like two opposites, which we all know. On a good team that can work. You don't have to all be the same. So you have the creative in Woody, more, the structure, I guess, if that would be the right way to call it, the more buttoned down in Elliott.
Yep.
When you describe the creative in Woody, at least in his brewing, that's you as a musician, is it not?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much, unafraid to do any type of style. That's for sure.
So that'll play. I mean, how does that play in terms of this? I mean, your creativity obviously is not limited to just music. However, I've got to think that really ties into so many elements of beer.
Yeah, and it does. There's so many different elements that I can play with that I'm like, when I worked at Boulevard in 2013, I was just bursting at the seams. Like, God, why? I really want to design this label artwork. I really want to name this beer. I really want to, connect with, a local celebrity to do a collaboration, or connect with another brewery to do a collaboration. Like, there's a lot that I can run with here. And so one of the other things that I love about this, and I love talking about this type of stuff on your show, is staying in our lane. Like all three of us have a certain lane that we are that we're in, and we respect each other in those lanes. And if we need to support each other and kind of hop into a lane for a minute, we can, but we're going right back in our lane. So, I'm going to leave a lot of the brewing process and the beer to Woody and Elliott. And sure, I'll be there to help out and all that stuff. I'm not going to say I'm a brewer, although at some point maybe I'll learn how to do it. And I have learned how to do it. And technically I know all of the steps, sure. But, I want to stay in my lane, which is kind of more on the creative of, first of all, it's business development. Like, some of my connections and networks are going to be crucial into the success of the company, but also, when it comes to collaborations and how do we tie and connect with the community, like, that's definitely my strong suit. And I love having that creative space, not just in the visuals or in the beer, but also being creative in how we connect with Kansas City and how we connect with the beer industry and the nation.
There's a much more important element here, and that is helping to revive a neighborhood. And the Jazz District, it has been moving in that direction. Mm-hmm. So you are a piece now to that puzzle. But I also know, we talked about it in the first episode you were on, in terms of being an urbanist. And we've seen the videos, those that are in Kansas City, the streetcar video, and Kemet did a song about that. You can see the video with him on the streetcar, all of this type of stuff. I mean, I know how important that element is to you, But now you add another layer to it as well, and that's the layer of race. And so you start talking about opportunity and
Yeah.
down the road, hopefully very soon down the road, where you have other people of color saying, wait a minute, look at what those guys did with the brewery. We can do this too, here in Kansas City, here in Missouri, here around the country.
Right.
Have you thought, I know you've thought about the magnitude of that big picture and what this could mean?
Yeah, I think we're, you know, what we've seen just from our announcement is definitely the tip of the iceberg. And what we do with it now is the part that that I'm excited about. You know, 2020 was just a great year for me to step back and say, what do I want to do with my life? You know, I think for a lot of us, especially as entrepreneurs and business owners and creatives, we're forced to have this come to Jesus moment, if you will, with yourself and your reality and the people that you're surrounded with and by. And so 2020 allowed, I mean, without 2020, this wouldn't be. I'll just put it like that. And so the pandemic was huge in that. And also the other thing is obviously the impact of George Floyd on our culture, on our nation, and on race relations and all and class as well. So you know, really, this seems like a legacy building project for me, and that's why I'm so passionate about it. This is why I stay up late thinking about it, because I've tried every single other avenue to be a successful musician, and at this point, you know, I think my vehicle is this particular project. And not just, you know, being a musician, but I think I was meant for something much more. And so, you know, that's definitely one of the things that we are very excited about. And how do we, you know, show this to other, you know, African Americans that are looking to get into industries that aren't where there's very little representation, and not just African Americans. You know, the other thing we really want to focus on is making this a safe space for all people who have been, you know, historically marginalized. And we're in Pride Month right now, so I want this to be a safe place for our LGBTQ brothers and sisters and everything in between as well. So that we want this to be a safe space for everybody, and we really are passionate about that. And the beer industry, I think, is starting to recognize that they've got a little bit of work to do here. And people like the breweries like Weathered Souls that started the Black is Beautiful movement. You know, we just want to be along that ride and be on the right side of history to help reintroduce an industry to folks who didn't have that experience.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, and it's inclusivity at its best, and you have a chance to control all of that from the ground level up every step of the way and make it a place. And I think that helps change neighborhoods too. I mean, when you start having a safe place, as you just said, for whoever it might be, that then people want to start visiting and coming down. And then it's not just, hey, let's go to the brewery, let's go over to this spot and that spot. I mean, you have to be, you're always dreaming. I know you, but you have to be thinking about big picture, what the neighborhood looks like a couple years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. At least for me, I start thinking, hey, this has the chance to go back to being what it was when the Monarchs were legendary down there, when that was the place to be. And I'm sure that's crossed your mind.
Oh, it totally has. And as an urbanist, like that's, you know, another one of the things that I get really excited about. This is why this project is super important for me. And probably why you see so much excitement building up in me is like, it is literally the intersection of everything that I'm passionate about. You know, and so when it comes to the neighborhood that we'll be in, like, you know, the Jazz District itself has seen tons of public investment with the city. And now we're starting to see some private dollars come in as well. And so one of the things that I really love to do is track the development patterns of communities of color. And I'm keeping track of what's happening in the Jazz District and what's about to happen, at least. And it looks like we're definitely going to see a shift happen very shortly, if not this year, then the next year. I think that's, you know, I won't say it starts with us, but we will definitely kind of be that next wave of development that happens in the area. You'll start to see single family houses pop up. You start to see, you know, you'll start to see a multifamily and a lot of mixed use stuff. You'll start to see some of the historic buildings coming back. You know, one of my biggest gripes, I guess, disappointments when I was growing up and seeing the Jazz District was how they didn't finish the job. It's, what I saw was a, artist representations of on these facades of these buildings, basically murals that kind of highlighted what was here. And behind those walls were just, an empty vacant building. And so I'm like, well, when will these buildings actually be reoccupied and have businesses thriving that were rapid, that were very prevalent in 18th and Vine historically. So I think we've got a long way to go. But I think the steps that what I've seen the community take, I think we do have our issues as well. And so we have a glowing opportunity. We have challenges. We have opportunities. And we have to come together to make sure that we have a better future going forward.
Can't wait for all this to happen. It is happening already. Nobody ever sees the behind the scenes work. So I know that you are pretty much 24/7 right now, spread all over the place. So I have to thank you just for spending the time. I know we have that connection, but you are running in a million directions, a lot of it because of the attention this is getting in the media, which is awesome. So you guys have struck a nerve in the best of ways. So let me re-ask the baseball themed questions to you, and this will be less about the Fantastics and more or all about Vine Street Brewing.
Okay.
What to this point is the biggest home run that you've hit?
The biggest home run I've hit is finding Woodie and Elliott and finding and securing the location that we'll be in. That's the biggest home run. Mostly because Woodie and Elliott allow us to have world-class beer. And by the way, we have a pilot system that we're brewing now. So we actually are brewing beers right now, and we've gotten great feedback so far. So that's great. And then obviously 18th and Vine is like where I would like to lay my legacy down and be a part of this rich cultural heritage that's soaked into the soil of the area. So that's I would say those are my home runs.
Love that. And the swing and miss question should be easy only in the sense that, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, this was not your first crack at it. So was there a specific swing and miss?
I think my biggest swing and miss was, I think it was mostly just the idea that, didn't know what I was really getting into the first few times. It was, more, it was a very green, more naive kind of approach. Like, yeah, let's just open a brewery. It's definitely not that easy. So I've spent that time going forward, studying, researching how to do that. And a lot of people don't know that about me, but like there was something this has always been working in the background of my mind. You can ask my wife, like, this is not a new thing. Like, she's like, all right, well, if you're going to do it this time, you better do it. So I would think my biggest swing and a miss was like not committing fully to, and not really committing fully, but not even knowing what I didn't know.
She's just glad that you finally are put up or shut up, right? Let's either go or move on to the next idea, because she knows there'll be more ideas.
Yeah,
your ideas don't ever stop.
I know. Yeah, that's true.
There's nothing to apologize for. It's just who you are. I mean, I think it's a good thing. So last baseball themed question, small ball. I've asked you that before, but what is small ball to you in terms of building something like this?
Give me kind of rephrase that for me.
All right, small ball, the little things that add up to the home runs.
Sure.
What would small ball be to you in the process of creating something like this?
Really just, I think for me with this whole thing is I see it more as like the galaxy. It's like we revolve around the sun every year, and stars align. And sometimes when you revolve around that first time, you're not ready. Second time, you're not ready. The fourth time, you're not ready. So, really just having that patience and not really giving up. Like, I knew I kept seeing a brewery in my future. I just kept seeing it, and it just kept it, like, my vision was like, this is going to happen. And, for me, I was like, well, when is that going to happen? I don't know. So, And I think that's the same goes for Woody too. Like he's like, I felt like I would start a brewery one day, and they just don't start one day. Like you just kind of have to do that. You got to take those baby steps to get there. You got to bunt sometimes. Sometimes you got to not strike at the first pitch. Not swing at the first pitch. So I think those are definitely the things that add up. And really, for me, I think that's like that is what makes this a rich like that's what makes cultures rich, is that slow simmering, that slow think about our evolution as people. We wouldn't be here without billions of years of things happening correctly at the right time. So really just staying consistent, understanding and keeping the right people around, keeping the dream alive is that for me.
All right, that's great stuff. And I think always that reminder in baseball terms too, that you can win without swinging for the fences. You do need to hit those home runs, but you've got to keep taking those steps forward. And I see it all the time in baseball, just the luck factor, the timing factor. Sometimes it just doesn't work out, and you can't give up. You have to keep going. That's why I love all the baseball references so much, not just because that's my other job, but it's a great teaching tool. It makes sense. It's always a good analogy. 4 final questions as we round the bases. The first one will be a music question, just because I think there'll be some people that are listening or watching this and saying, wait a minute, are we never going to hear Kemets music again? Oh, well, you could always hear it. It's out there. But you're such a great live performer. So I believe, if I don't remember when, I believe you dropped the name Phantom. It was Kemet the Phantom. Maybe that should have been a little bit of hint of what was coming, because Kemet the Phantom doesn't really work with Kemet the brewery owner. Right. But is the music career a thing of the past, or is that still a piece of the puzzle?
Oh man, it'll never be a thing of the past. At this point, good. I don't think there's any separating me from music. It is literally, whenever I don't get to do music, you can ask my wife, I'm a very miserable person. So music will always be a part of me and everything that I do, always. I just released a beer with Crane Brewing 2 weeks ago that came out that was in conjunction with an album. There's going to be projects like that will be happening with Vine Street Brewing. There will also be live music at Vine Street Brewing. And so, the music side will never die. This is like half of the reason why we're doing this is because of our love for music as well. So
good. That's what I was hoping, because there's room for all of it, as much as there aren't always enough hours in the day. But at your heart, at your soul, you're always a musician. And if people have not heard Kemet, you need to do it. It's just, there's so much energy and diversity to the music too. Yeah. Just impossible to label with a specific genre. It would be very, very short-sighted to say, oh, he's a hip hop entertainer, because that's just a small piece. And that leads me to my second question, because very much like beer, right? I think there's some similarities to beer and music in the sense that there are a million genres to it, and there are combinations, and some work and some don't. Sort of a two-part question here. One, how much of a similarity is there between the creativity of music and the creativity of beer? And do you have a favorite style?
As a music producer, I would definitely say there is a huge similarity as far as I'm concerned, because when we think about the ingredients that you could potentially use in beer, which are almost unlimited, if it's edible, you can technically brew with it. The same goes with sound. Like I can take my phone and record a bird chirping and put it in a beat, and that's how that goes. The sky's the limit. And so when you have that much to work with, yes, there is some striking similarities, and that's what also drew me to it. And not only that, but there, you can sure, I can sit here and plug around on my piano and come up with a beat by myself. But the real fun part is doing it with other people. And that was the thing I loved about the brewing industry, is that everyone is very collaborative, from what I've seen at least. There's breweries that share recipes. They come up with recipes together, and they'll do they'll do it, remotely. Like they'll do they'll try to do it at their brewery, and then across the country they'll do it at another brewery. So it's really cool, this collaborative nature. And I mean, in my music, you can tell that I'm a huge collaborator. If you can't, for instance, bass lines and trumpets and stuff, like I'm not doing that. I'm having my colleagues come and work with me there. So I'm very passionate about that, and I love those two similarities in the beer world. And so my favorite style, oh man, it just depends on the time of day. It depends on where I'm at, depends on the weather. I would say my go-tos at this point, and I wasn't always like this, but I would say I'll take a solid IPA. But I love saisons. I love wit beers. I love kind of Belgian style beers. Those are always great to me. But I love a great stout, a great porter, and during the fall and winter. I'll take a yard, I'll take a Budweiser. Like if I'm at a ball game and it's hot and I basically want something to really quench my thirst, with some great carbonation, I'm not afraid I'll drink a lager any day. I'll take a lager. So, I love, it depends on the temperature of the beer too. Like if, for a quad beer, quad style beer, like I'm gonna let that warm up just a little bit. Like I don't want that freezing cold, because I won't be able to taste kind of those rich, deep intricacies of the beer. With the Pilsner, complete opposite. I want that as cold as possible. So I don't really have a favorite, but pretty much whatever's in front of me, I'll drink.
I like it.
Yeah.
It is. It depends on the mood, the time of day, what's going on. I'm already picturing tasting a nice porter on a cool fall day. It's hard to think about that right now when it's 80 something, 90 something degrees out. But that's the beauty of beer.
Yeah,
there's a time and a place.
That's right.
And you're right. Put it in front of you. There's a good chance that you're gonna drink it too. I for a while I've been hot on Boulevard Space Camper. I love that.
That's definitely a go-to.
It is. It's become a go-to. I mean, it kind of came, I wouldn't say out of nowhere, but it was not a household name. It's become one. Okay. Third question as we round the bases. Was I on 3 or 4? I've lost track. It's going to be 3 now.
I think it's 3.
Yeah. See, I've never done that, but we got knee deep in the beer there, which was good. Third question is, as we round the bases, have you thought about like what a perfect day at the brewery would be like? A perfect day at Vine Street Brewing would look like what?
Oh, a perfect day at Vine Street Brewing would be live music, like really dope Kansas City, like fusion, hip hop, jazz stuff going on, just amazing musicianship. Sitting outside in the beer garden, which we'll have, smoking a joint. That would be awesome. With some barbecue. Yeah.
That's the perfect day. There are going to be some perfect days.
There's going to be some perfect days. Now, I don't know about that. I don't know about the green part that I mentioned earlier. I might get slapped on the wrist for that one later, but hey, you asked the question.
That you answered it. So I'll let you roll with that one. Well, that was not a pun intended, by the way.
There we go.
Yep. Okay. Last, and that, by the way, those perfect days will be coming in 2022, Vine Street Brewing. Right. Last question, the walk-off. I'm not asking you to move on to your next thing. And generally, guys like you have more ideas that they're not willing to share yet. So I'm not going to pin you down on that. Can we at least go with the brewery and the music is not the last thing? There will be more, right?
There will be more. Yeah. I would say I'm not done in the real estate development sector. I haven't really started there. I haven't really had a major project there yet, but I'm definitely interested in having an impact on the urban fabric of Kansas City and the culture that's inside of the built environment. That's for sure.
There's a lot going on. Always is, always will be. But first and foremost on the forefront right now is Vine Street Brewing opening up in Early 2022, early-ish, first quarter, you said?
First quarter. Yeah.
So,
Shooting for January, February, first quarter though, for sure.
oh, I can't wait. That's going to be here before we know it, which means I know you've got a lot of work to do. If people want to find out more, I don't know that there's a website yet or anything like that, but what's the easiest way for people to get updates?
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram, Vine Street Brewing, Facebook as well, Vine Street Brewing, and then the website is vinestbrewing.com.
vinestbrewing.com. Okay, so you've got that going on. Vine. Do it. Give it to me one more time.
vinestbrewing.com.
Okay, vinestreetbrewing.com, vinestbrewing.com. Kevin, I'm so excited for everything that is coming up here. I cannot wait to go and hang out at wherever that location is, somewhere in the Jazz District, to be announced when the time is right.
Yep.
I'm proud of everything you're doing. Proud to call you a friend. Congratulations, and it's going to be a huge hit. So thanks for spending time. We'll do this again because you'll have something else and there'll be something else and they'll say, okay, let's bring Kemet back on. But congrats on everything.
Hey, thanks, Joel. It's always an honor. I appreciate it.